On tonight's summary of the Israel-Hamas War, Day 175. Low-level hostage negotiations are due to resume in Cairo next week. All sides are still awaiting a breakthrough. The number of Palestinians injured in the Gaza Strip since the war began crosses 75,000. Hamas states that the IDF has targeted Hamas police officers in the areas of Saja'ia in Gaza City. 17 people were reported killed in these airstrikes. The IDF imposes a breathing siege in the West Bank town of Jericho in its hunt for a Palestinian who carried out an attack into the Jordan Valley yesterday. Ali Abdel Hassan Naim, deputy commander of Hezbollah's rocket and missile units, was assassinated today in Lebanon. Israel is reportedly coordinating the establishment of a multinational Arab force in the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, Minister Eisenkot presented his day-after plans for the future of the Gaza Strip and the relationship between Israel and the Palestinians. Hello everyone, I'm Alon Burstein, visiting assistant professor in the Department of Political Science and Israel Institute Fellow at the University of California, Irvine, here to bring you the summary of the last 24 hours of the Israel-Hamas War. It is currently the evening of March 29th, 2024 in the United States, the morning of March 30th, 2024 in the Middle East. Starting with the hostage situation, the low-level negotiations between the sides debating the hostage deal are due to resume in Cairo next week. The teams convening will not be the senior negotiating staff. The aim of these talks are to create a new framework to bring the senior negotiating staff together in order to possibly work out a deal should a breakthrough occur. Despite the fact that the negotiating teams are the lower level of the teams, the senior staff are still discussing the matter with each other. It was reported today that the head of the Israeli Shabak, Ronen Bar, met with the Egyptian head of intelligence, Abbas Kamel, earlier this week in order to lay the groundwork for the lower level of negotiations, in order to in turn lay the groundwork for possibly the higher level of negotiations later on. Amidst this, while Israel approved the mission of the negotiating team to Cairo, the terms of the delegation, i.e. how much leeway the delegation can show with regards to the Hamas demands in order to achieve a breakthrough, remain vague. Yesterday, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu cancelled a meeting of the War Cabinet that was meant to discuss this, instead convening the expanded cabinet where positions are known to be a lot more hard-lined and against concessions. In the meeting of the expanded cabinet, the head of the Israeli Mossad, Dedi Barnea, reportedly stated that the negotiating teams need more leeway in order to negotiate the largest sticking point at the moment, which is the freedom of movement within the Gaza Strip that Hamas is demanding. Hamas is demanding that all Palestinians be allowed to return to the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, while Israel is refusing this term. He stated that this is a game changer in the negotiations. His position was strengthened by Minister Eisenkot. Prime Minister Netanyahu in turn objected and demanded that Israel demand to remain firm in the face of Hamas's demands. Later in the day, the Prime Minister's office put out a statement stating that the majority of the cabinet and also the IDF are all against allowing complete unchecked movement of Palestinians in northern Gaza. It's important to note that while this is what was put out by the Prime Minister's office, this is not actually what was being requested by the head of the Mossad. Instead, he was suggesting that Israel negotiate this position in order to achieve a breakthrough, rather than saying, no, Israel is not going to allow any movement in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, and instead Israel's position be that we're waiting for Hamas to come back with its own terms after it capitulates to Israel's demands. Right now, what has been reported is that leading up to the talks in Cairo, the negotiating team in Israel has been given more leeway. Remains to be seen if this is enough in order to achieve a breakthrough as the days go on. Moving on to the Gaza Strip, there were no rockets or mortars fired from the Gaza Strip into Israel in the last 24 hours. Regarding the fighting in the Gaza Strip, in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, there's ongoing fighting in Al-Shifa hospital. The IDF is now carrying out its operation in Al-Shifa for over 2 weeks. More gun battles were reported within the compound, as the IDF is still going through each and every building, reportedly each and every room, in order to comb the area for both weaponry and the different suspects that the IDF still suspects are in the area. Other news related to the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. Sky News in Arabic stated that the IDF attacked the office building of the network in the Gaza City today, and no injuries occurred. The IDF responded stating that the structure that had posed a threat to forces in the Ramallah region of Gaza City was targeted after it was evacuated from all people and all civilians. The IDF also emphasized that no one was injured in this attack. In addition to this, like yesterday, Hamas's Al-Qassam brigade stated that they attacked IDF tanks in the Tel al-Halawa region of Gaza City with Yasin 105 missiles. They stated that some of these missiles managed to successfully hit the tanks. It was not reported that many people were hurt, specifically in these attacks. Other news related to the north of the Gaza Strip. Hamas stated today that the IDF carried out an airstrike in the Saja'ia area of Gaza City, targeting the movement's police force in the neighborhood. According to the report, 10 police officers were killed and 7 civilians were killed as well. The statement added that the police force were engaged in humanitarian civilian work. The IDF did not specifically put out a statement about this attack in Saja'ia. However, the IDF has been targeting the different Hamas police force units throughout the entire Gaza Strip. This started in the areas of Rafah, it then continued to the areas of central Gaza Strip. Then there were reports of the IDF carrying out attacks against the police officers and the different people in charge of police units in different areas of the northern parts of the Gaza Strip and Gaza City. So it does make sense that the IDF might be targeting the police officers in Saja'ia. However, this particular attack was not reported by the IDF. In the central parts of the Gaza Strip, there are continuous reports of gun battles, although, as has happened in recent days, while it is reported that gun battles are occurring in this sector, it was not reported specifically where they were. The al-Quds brigades of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad were also reported targeting IDF troops in the area. The IDF reported targeting a weapons warehouse with an airstrike. However, again, all this is reported in the central parts of the Gaza Strip. Likely this is occurring in al-Nuseirat refugee camp, or in the outskirts either of al-Bureid refugee camp or the areas of Deir el-Balach. However, again, that is speculation. All that is being reported by both sides is that there is fighting that is happening in the central parts of the Gaza Strip. In the southern parts of the Gaza Strip, in Khan Yunis, substantial fighting continues in the al-Amal region of the city. An RPG missile was reportedly fired today at the top floor of a compound where IDF soldiers were held up, causing the collapse of part of the building, injuring 16 IDF soldiers, and causing 1 fatality. In addition to this, the IDF reported that 1 tunnel entrance that was located in the neighborhood was discovered due to interrogations of different Hamas operatives that were arrested in the area in the last several days. Reportedly, this tunnel was mapped out for its future destruction. In addition, there are also continued reports of escalations in the al-Qarara region. This is in the eastern parts of Khan Yunis. The al-Quds brigades of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad reported intensive gun battles throughout the entire region of al-Qarara, stating that they are engaging IDF forces. In Rafah, a bombing was reported targeting a house in the northern parts of the city. 14 people were reported killed in this attack, including 7 children. The IDF did not put out any specific statements regarding what this attack was targeting. Other news related to the Gaza Strip and possibly to a future Rafah invasion. CNN reported today that the meeting between U.S. officials and the Israeli delegation that is meant to discuss a Rafah invasion may already be scheduled for the coming Monday. As a reminder, I'll say that the Israeli delegation is going to be headed by the War Cabinet Observer, Minister Ron Dermer, and the head of Israel's National Security Council, Tzachi Hanegbi. The delegation is being sent at the request of U.S. President Biden from Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu in their last conversation. While in Israel, it is repeatedly being stated that the delegation is going to the United States in order to discuss the invasion of Rafah and the IDF's plans for evacuating civilians. In the United States, it is constantly being reported that the administration is going to present to the delegation alternatives to the Rafah invasion, so it remains to be seen what happens actually in these meetings. It's going to be very interesting to see how this impacts the IDF's plans, which reportedly are already ready for a Rafah invasion. Relating to this future Rafah invasion, Shaykh al-Awsat published a report today stating that Hamas has changed its tactics in recent weeks leading up to the Rafah invasion. According to the report, Al-Qassam is avoiding engaging the IDF forces directly in most places in order to save its personnel and its weaponry, both for Rafah invasion as well as for the long-term strategy of a day after when Hamas wants to take over the Gaza Strip yet again. Similarly, Al-Arabi al-Jadid quoted Hamas sources today, stating that, quote, the resistance has begun planning for the Rafah invasion, and adding, high-level coordination with other elements in the resistance, specifically Hezbollah and Iran, is being done as well, leading up to this Rafah invasion. So what we're seeing is that Hamas is saying that it is getting ready, or possibly is ready, for this invasion. The IDF has said that it is ready, possibly ready for the invasion. In Israel, the political establishment has said the invasion is going to happen no matter what. The United States has told Israel to not carry out the invasion yet. This delegation is now going to the United States on Monday to discuss this. Remains to be seen what happens in the coming weeks. Regarding casualties, 1 IDF soldier is reported killed in the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours. This brings the total number of IDF soldiers killed in the Gaza Strip since the invasion began to 254. Despite the initial reports of 16 IDF soldiers that were injured in the al-Amal attack that occurred in Khan Yunis, the number of IDF soldiers that have been injured in the Gaza Strip since the invasion began, according to the IDF website, has been officially updated to only 5 more injuries that happened today. It is possible that the initial number of 16 was people who were lightly injured, and therefore they're not counted in this. Regardless, the official number of IDF soldiers that were injured in the Gaza Strip since the invasion began is now 1,528. The Palestinian Health Ministry in the Gaza Strip is reporting that 71 Palestinians were killed in the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours. This brings the total number of Palestinians killed in the Gaza Strip since the war began to 32,632. Regarding injuries, the number of Palestinians that were injured in the Gaza Strip since the war began has crossed 75,000. The Palestinian Health Ministry in the Gaza Strip reported today that the number of Palestinians injured in the Gaza Strip is now 75,092. Moving on to the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip, there were continued missions of paradropping aid throughout the Gaza Strip, and specifically the northern parts of the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours. These missions included planes from the United States, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, as well as Jordan. Other news, Reuters quoted an anonymous senior source in the U.S. State Department today, stating that with regards to different sections in the Gaza Strip, and specifically famine that may be in the different sections, I quote, "While we can say with confidence that famine is a significant risk in the south and center, it is not present. But in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, it is both a risk and quite possibly is present in at least some areas." The source added that the main obstacle to more food distribution in the Gaza Strip is the scarcity of trucks in Gaza, making it difficult to coordinate aid missions. Associated with his claim, the IDF coordinator of activities in the Palestinian territory stated today that only 77% of humanitarian aid that has entered the Gaza Strip since the beginning of 2024 has actually been distributed within the Gaza Strip. His tweet adds the question, where is the rest of that aid? Is it piling up in the agency's warehouses? Did Hamas steal it from the UN? Distribution in the Gaza Strip is what's important. In turn, the UN stated today that throughout March, 30% of humanitarian aid missions in the northern parts of Gaza and 10% of aid missions in the southern parts of Gaza have been denied by Israeli authorities. It was not specifically stated this is meant to countermand, or at least to refute, the allegation that what is stopping the aid distribution is the scarcity of trucks in the Gaza Strip. However, if one is looking to where is the holdup, these two agencies, on the one hand the United Nations, on the other hand Israel and the United States, are stating different sides regarding what is holding up food distribution in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. In addition to this, it was reported today that the United States is planning on the pier that is being established in the Gaza Strip to become operational in mid to late April. This will allow the establishment of the maritime corridor that the U.S. wants to establish from Cyprus, which is part of the EU, into the Gaza Strip to allow humanitarian aid to come in much more frequently and in larger quantities. In addition, it was reported that the U.S. is hoping to develop what is known as Crossing 96. This is another land crossing between Israel and the Gaza Strip. It's an old crossing that's no longer functional, to be used as another entry point to allow aid to come into the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. Moving on to the West Bank, substantial IDF activity continues to be reported in the Oja village, with 10 different checkpoints being deployed in the area and substantial searches being orchestrated by the IDF in their hunt for a Palestinian who carried out the attack in the Jordan Valley yesterday. In addition, in a very unusual move, the IDF has imposed what is called a breathing siege in the town of Jericho. Jericho is historically a relatively calm city and is also the exit and entry point for Palestinians into Jordan. A siege being imposed on Jericho is a very rare move. Again, this is what's called a breathing siege that allows people to come in and out, but all exits and entries to Jericho have thorough inspections of the IDF before people can come in or out. Remains to be seen how long this is imposed. The IDF is, as I stated, hunting down this Palestinian who carried out an attack in the Jordan Valley yesterday, injuring 3 people. In addition to this, Omar Abu Halal, who's a prominent Palestinian Islamic Jihad operative in the Nur Shams refugee camp in the West Bank, was arrested today in a joint operation of the IDF and the Shabak. He is one of the local operatives who is in charge of orchestrating terror activity in the region, and Nur Shams refugee camp has become a big hotbed of terrorism since the war began. In addition to this, IDF activity was also reported throughout the West Bank in the areas of Nablus, Hebron, and Lakef. 5 Palestinians were reported arrested by the IDF, and substantial weaponry was reportedly confiscated. In addition, related to the West Bank, the third Friday of Ramadan's prayers in Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem passed calmly today. The Waqf, that is the Islamic organization that is in charge of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, claimed that 125,000 people attended. In turn, the Israeli police estimated that 50,000 people attended and that several thousand people from the West Bank attended. Either way, contrary to a lot of expectations of more escalations that would occur during the month of Ramadan, specifically during Friday prayers, this has actually been one of the most calmest Ramadans that have been for many years in Jerusalem, and specifically in East Jerusalem. And again, the third Friday of Ramadan now passed relatively calmly. Moving on to the northern parts of Israel, southern parts of Lebanon, there are continuous escalations between Hezbollah and the IDF, and unlike yesterday, today there was substantial IDF activity that was also reported. Regarding the fire that was reported from Hezbollah, barrages of over 20 rockets were fired throughout the day, as well as incidents of anti-tank missiles that were also fired into the northern parts of Israel. Rockets targeted the areas of Abirim and Fetusa in the Upper Galilee. There were also rockets that were fired towards the areas of Margaliot, Metula, Bar'am, Kiryat Shmona, as well as towards the western Galilee, targeting the areas of Shlomi, Rosh Nikra, and Batzat. Anti-tank missiles were also reported fired towards the areas of Matat, and there was also an aerial target, likely a drone, that was intercepted by the IDF in the Upper Galilee. In addition, Hezbollah claimed several border shooting incidents in the areas of Kibbutz Malachia, and Hezbollah stated that it fired 2 Burkan missiles towards IDF outposts in the areas of Biranit. Regarding IDF activity, IDF warplanes reportedly attacked rocket launching sites in the areas of Ita Ash'ab in southern Lebanon, as well as targeting Hezbollah military structures in the area. Other attacks also targeted Hezbollah operatives in the areas of Misal Jabal, and attacks were also reported in the areas of Shaba, targeting different Hezbollah infrastructure. Launching sites were also attacked in the areas of Yarun. In addition to all this, Al-Manar reported that the IDF carried out artillery fire in the areas of Hula and Markaba villages, and more attacks were also reported in the areas of Kila, and artillery fire was also reported in the areas of Misal Jabal. In addition to all this, Ali Abdel Hassan Naim, who is the deputy commander of Hezbollah's rocket and missile units, was assassinated today. Reportedly, his car was targeted by a drone that fired several missiles at it in the areas of Al-Bazoria, this is near Tzor in southern Lebanon. Unlike other assassinations that occurred in the northern parts of Lebanon, the IDF claimed responsibility for this attack today, stating that Naim was a known figure in Hezbollah and one of the central figures coordinating rocket and missile launches throughout southern Lebanon, and that his assassination will be a major blow to the organization. Related to these expanded attacks of the IDF throughout southern Lebanon as well as into northern Lebanon, and implying responsibility also for the different attacks that were carried out in Syria yesterday that Israel did not claim responsibility for, Israel's defense minister Yoav Gallant stated today that the IDF is expanding its campaign in the north. Listing several different places where attacks have been carried out, he stated, and I quote, "We will get to Hezbollah anywhere it may be. This is true for Beirut, Baalbek, Tzor, Sidon, Nabatia, and across the sector and to further places like Damascus and more." Regarding all these attacks, Hezbollah announced the deaths of several more operatives throughout the last 24 hours, bringing the total number of operatives of the group states have been killed since the war began to 263. In turn, Israel's defense minister Yoav Gallant stated today that Hezbollah has lost over 320 operatives since the war began. Other news related to Syria. The Syrian Human Rights Observatory reported today that a senior Syrian officer who is very affiliated with Hezbollah was assassinated when an explosive device that was planted in his car was detonated. According to the report, he was a mine and explosives engineer, and he was the officer in charge of coordination with Hezbollah and other pro-Iranian militias in the areas of southwest Damascus, as well as along the Lebanese-Syrian border and the border areas with Israel near Quneitra. The Syrian Human Rights Observatory organization, which often does report that the IDF carried out specific activity, added to their statement, "It is not known who planted the explosive device." This may mean that the organization actually does not suspect the IDF or Israel more at large in carrying out this assassination. However, it is very likely that the Mossad at least has something to do with this assassination because it is in line with the different attacks that the IDF, the Mossad, and different organizations in Israel have been carrying out in Syria in the last several weeks. Related to this, more details came out today about the attack that occurred in Haleb that I reported about yesterday. The magnitude of the attack was extremely unusual for the current level of fighting and attacks that are being carried out within Syria. The attack reportedly resulted in 44 deaths. These include 36 Syrian soldiers, 1 Syrian who's pro-Iranian, according to the report, and 7 Hezbollah operatives. Al-Arabi al-Jadid reported that the target of the attack was a Hezbollah headquarters center in the areas east of the airport, as well as weapons warehouses of different pro-Iranian militias. In addition to this, the Voice of the Capital Radio stated that simultaneous attacks yesterday targeted the Syrian military facilities southeast of the airport. Reportedly, these facilities are involved in research and development of missiles and air defenses. Moving on to the political and general trends of the last 24 hours. Despite the ongoing diplomatic crisis between the United States and the Israeli government, the Washington Post published a story today stating that the Biden administration has authorized a substantial weapons shipment to Israel. According to the report, some 1,800 bombs, each weighing 900 kilos, and 500 bombs, each weighing 225 kilos, are included in the shipment. And it was also agreed that the two sides are going to advance a previously agreed upon purchase of 25 F-35 planes to the IDF for the price of $2.5 billion US. The report stated that it seems apparent that despite the growing mistrust within the Biden administration of the Netanyahu government and the disagreements about the Rafah invasion, the White House did not intend on conditioning armament sales and transfers to Israel. A White House source is also quoted in the report, stating that the United States continues to support Israel's right to defend itself, adding that conditioning aid is not our policy. Other political news. There was a report in the New York Times today about the gradually changing tone of Germany with regard to its blanket support for Israel in the war. The report cites several different things, stating that Germany has been the staunchest supporter of Israel both diplomatically as well as materially, as Germany is the second largest exporter of arms to Israel. However, that opinion polls in Germany are showing that public opinion is changing with regards to the prolonged nature of the war, and that this in turn has translated to a harsher tone that different diplomats are taking with regards to Israel. The report specifically cites the German foreign minister and her criticism of a possible Rafah invasion, as well as the statements of the German chancellor stating that while they support Israel unconditionally, they will not ignore starvation conditions in Gaza. Other political news. Russia issued a condemnation of the attacks that were carried out in Syria yesterday, stating that these are a dangerous provocation of the region. Iran also issued such condemnations, stating that such attacks violate international law and Syrian sovereignty, and stating that the UN Security Council should take measures against Israel as a result of these attacks. Other political news. There was a report today of a brewing deal between the United States and the Palestinian Authority that may have big ramifications for the future. According to the report, as part of the United States' attempt to create a rejuvenated Palestinian Authority and the pressures the United States is leveling on the Palestinian Authority to undergo reforms, the Palestinian Authority is developing a plan to stop paying salaries to Palestinian prisoners that are held in jail in Israel. And instead, the Palestinian Authority is trying to develop an alternative mechanism that is defined in this report as a general welfare program that will stop paying salaries to prisoners in Israel and instead care for their families, but at the same time will allow the Palestinian Authority to state to the United States that it is no longer paying Palestinians who carried out violent attacks against Israel, paying them salaries, and will allow the United States to say that the Palestinian Authority is undergoing the reforms the United States is demanding. This is a very explosive political topic in Israel. The fact that the Palestinian Authority pays salaries to Palestinian prisoners has been cited many times by hawkish right-wing elements as one of the main reasons why Israel cannot negotiate with the Palestinian Authority and move towards a future Palestinian state. If this deal does actually go through, and it remains to be seen if it does go through, it will be very interesting how this in turn is translated into pressure that the United States levels against Israel to negotiate a future settlement with the Palestinian Authority. Moving on to the future of the Gaza Strip, reports came out today about significant advances that were made in Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant's plans to bring a multinational Arab force into the Gaza Strip in order to both secure the pier that the United States is planning to construct, as well as to oversee the security of humanitarian aid transports within the Gaza Strip. Gallant reportedly updated Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Israeli War Cabinet about these advances that were made during his trip to Washington, D.C., with the aim of this multinational force, which according to reports is going to be made up of armed personnel of 3 undisclosed Arab countries. According to reports, the aim is going to be to operate a security force in the Gaza Strip under the auspices of U.S. supervision, which will allow, on the one hand, the United States to have a foothold in the Gaza Strip on the ground and be involved in what's going on, which will in turn build trust within Israel about this international force. On the other hand, not have U.S. forces on the ground in the Gaza Strip, which is something the U.S. administration has repeatedly stated it does not want to have. According to the report, Gallant has already sent IDF and security staff to the respective Arab countries to negotiate this, and after his visit to the United States, the administration has also made efforts to promote this avenue. The report added, however, that the United States has conditioned its support for this plan on steps being taken towards other facets of Gallant's day-after plan for the future of the Gaza Strip. His day-after plan involves grooming more local leadership that will govern different aspects of civilian life in the Gaza Strip and that will have some ties to Palestinian authorities in the West Bank. I will say I'm not going to develop this here. If you're interested more in learning more about Gallant's plan, check out my summary from March 15th. There I talk about when Gallant developed his plan and presented it to the different aspects of Israel's war cabinet. Amidst this, after there has been no debate in either of Israel's cabinets regarding Prime Minister Netanyahu's day after plan that he presented over a month ago, yesterday it was reported that Minister Eisenkot presented to the war cabinet his own plans for the day after vision in the Gaza Strip. Like Netanyahu's plan, his plan is laid out into three different stages: the immediate, medium term, and long term. In the immediate term, his plan states that in addition to the aim of dismantling Hamas and advancing a hostage deal, emphasis must be placed on creating a U.S.-Israeli-Arab coalition in order to transfer responsibility for civilian matters in the Gaza Strip from Israel to a local Palestinian body under international supervision, with the aim of stopping Hamas from restoring itself. So this, to some extent, matches Gallant's plan as well. His plan in the immediate also calls for developing a joint U.S. and Israeli vision for a Palestinian entity, explicitly stating that an alternative must be presented to the United States in order to replace the demand for an immediate Palestinian state, and instead present to the United States what Israel can agree to with regards to a Palestinian entity. In the medium term, the plan is divided to security and civilian matters. On the security level, the plan agrees with Netanyahu's plan, stating that there must be a complete demilitarization of the Gaza Strip, and Israel must maintain all security responsibility west of the Jordan River until the Mediterranean. This includes the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. The plan, however, does elaborate how this can be done. Regarding civilian matters, the plan states that management of the Gaza Strip will be transferred to a technocratic Palestinian entity that will be supervised by 5 Arab states, the United States, and the international community, and this it somewhat deviates from other plans that have been proposed for the future of the Gaza Strip because it actually stipulates how this entity will govern. In the long term, the plan does suggest that there is a possibility for future negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians regarding future statehood after a 5-year period. In this 5-year period, according to the plan, Israel is going to investigate and inspect the reforms that are being done by the Palestinian Authority. The plan also, however, emphasizes that Israel is not going to commit to a future Palestinian state at this stage because that will be seen as a gift to Hamas and somewhat of a reward for October 7th. I will say that I am planning to put out a report about the different plans that Israel has presented for the future of the Gaza Strip in the coming days, so watch out for that report. If you find these reports important, please do remember to hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications if you want to know when reports come out. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. That is my report for the last 24 hours. I'll be back tomorrow.